There have been a lot of players with ups and downs in the first half of the season. Find out which of those Matt and I think are being slept on heading into the second half on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB. Here, as always, with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Ane, and you can find him on Twitter at Matthew_Ane. If you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below and subscribe to the channel and gives you notification every time we drop a new episode. And lastly, but most importantly to Matt and I, guys, join us on the Subtext platform. Through Subtext, it's an in-depth personalized experience through text message alerts right to your phone, offering so much more than we can in this 30-minute podcast. And guys, if you're looking for the link to our Subtext, it's available in the link wherever you're listening or watching, or available on any of our social media platforms. And this episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. And guys, today we have a very fun style episode. So we're taking that classic sleeper type episode and we're putting a little bit of a all-star break type of twist on it. And we're going to be talking about players that we think are being slept on heading into the second half. So whether you have these guys and, we think you should hold them or get rid of them, or if you don't have them and you can go out there and capitalize and get them for, cheaper than we think they're going to perform for. That's basically the concept we're aiming for here today. With that being said, Matt, why don't you take the wheel here and let the people know who we're starting off with today?
All right, no doubt. Great way to also sum up the show. Enjoyed it, and exactly what we're going for with this first guy here, Jackson Chourio. Now, I know he's 72% owned. He's more on like the guy I kind of want to go out and acquire because, everybody's been pretty frustrated with the peaks and valleys that has been Jackson Chourio this season. He gets really hot like this last month. He had 2 weeks of brilliance, 16 runs, 2 bombs, 11 ribs, and 2 stolen bases, batted .295 on the month. But the last 2 weeks has just been 5 runs, no home runs, 1 rib, 1 stolen base, batting .206. So here's the thing, right? Everybody just gets really like I want instant gratification with these prospects like we've been spoiled with the last couple of years. And that just hasn't been the case with this class. And I feel like, okay, with Chourio, who's been playing pretty much the whole season, I think that the second half, the adjustments are going to be made over the All-Star break. And he's going to come back this weekend and we're going to see a different Chourio. And by the end of this month, he's going to be widely owned. And this probably is the last time you can go out there and probably go and acquire him. So if I were you, I'd go out there, pay like 50 cents to 75 cents on the dollar and try and scoop them up, because they might have a little fatigue with being the Chourio owner, and they might have some holes they need to fill. So you might be able to go out there and get them for cheap.
Yeah, and Jackson Chourio was literally one of the top prospects in all of baseball for the Milwaukee Brewers coming into the year. He was literally right behind Jackson Holliday. He was right there with James Wood and all of those big names. And I think at 20 years old, we got to give the kid a little bit of a break. Matt, you mentioned the last month for him, which actually was pretty stellar. It's cooled off a little bit. But there's so much upside here with Chourio. In his minor league track record, he has showed off the power tool, the speed tool, which he's still in the 97th percentile of all Major League Baseball players when it comes to sprint speed. So I like that. He's hitting the ball hard. The bat speed looks good. I am highlighting the positive stuff. There is, some negative when it comes to the underlying stuff. But for a guy who has had a lot of peaks and valleys, as Matt mentioned, that stuff is changing. I want to say for the last month, I guarantee those numbers do look a little bit better. So I think we ride with the 20-year-old Jackson Chourio, once again, outfielder for the Milwaukee Brewers. And if you can get him cheap, I think I'm definitely doing that right now. Let's move on to somebody there's actually some great information on that we could talk about. Let's talk about Max Meyer, starting pitcher for the Miami Marlins. And this is actually an interesting one. And when I read this quote, I kind of laughed to myself. So the update on Max Meyer is that if the Marlins wait until after July 21st, they will get an extra year of control on Max Meyer. And the quote was, it's a bit unsavory. And when I read that, I was like, yeah, because all of the pitchers that the Marlins have thrown out there when they could have had Max Meyer out there the whole time, is just interesting to me. Max Meyer, if you're not familiar, was one of the top pitching prospects in all of baseball just a few years ago, was right up there with Andrew Painter and guys like that. But unfortunately, he got Tommy John surgery, which held him out. But this year, he got 3 starts to start the year in the majors. He had a 2.12 ERA, 17 innings pitched, 14 strikeouts, 3 walks, and an 0.8 whip. Meyer was finally starting to show off some of that prospect pedigree. In the minors, he's been better of late, but the numbers don't look great on the whole because when he first got sent down, sometimes you get that Taj Bradley effect was the guy last year who would happen too. Started off great in the majors, got sent down, was bad in the minors, came back up, was successful again. I think we'll see something like that with Max Meyer this year. I think if he gets called back up, he's going to have that fire in his belly. 4.45 ERA for Meyer in the minors this year, 14 starts, 54 innings, 62 strikeouts, and a 1.44 whip. But once again, I don't think that's indicative of the talent of this guy. Max Meyer is, 26% owned on Yahoo. So there's plenty of room to, pick him up still at the moment.
No, dude, honestly, he's somebody we've been kind of just waiting for all season. If you've been watching the show, if you're new to the show, this is new news for you. But, with Meyer and the Miami Marlins, it's just been frustration because, they've called up dudes that don't even have business even being in the bigs at this point. And Myers is just like, okay, we think he's going to get the call, and then they don't. And then this, that, the third. So this is the time to do it. I'd stash him now, see if he comes up in the next 2 weeks. If he does, I think you might have somebody special on your hands. And we're going to be talking about him for years to come. The second this kid comes up, he has electric talent, like everything Dom explained. So I'm going to move on. And I'm going to talk about Walker Buehler. So he's somebody I definitely think is obtainable. He's somebody you're going to have to trade for. He's owned in 63% of leagues. And, him and the Dodgers just need to get on the same page. And also, the Dodgers need to go out and also get him a trainer to just keep this dude on the field. But, he's working on his mechanics right now while he's, doing his rehab stint. He could say, this is a quote right off of Yahoo's website. I could say there's progress, but I really can't speak on, intelligent on what the progress is. I really can't. Roberts admits on Wednesday, there's still no clear timetable for his potential return, but in fact, the full recovery of the injury has been throwing. But the fact that he is fully recovered from the injury and throwing regular bullpen sessions is going to eventually have a quick ramp up. Sorry for my terrible reading skills. I probably need to go back to first grade. But ultimately, what I'm reading for that is they're identifying the issues that he's already had and they've seen on the mound. And instead of bringing him back and whatnot, just because he's first eligible and he's, obviously recovered, they want to work on the things that make him successful. So this is great news. They've done this in the past with players. They're doing it right now with Bobby Miller, another guy we're probably going to talk about later. And, these are good signs. I have a feeling the second he returns from the IL, he's going to take a step forward. We're going to see, maybe not 100% of Walker Buehler of the past, but maybe like 75%. And 75% of the old Walker Buehler is going to be fantastic and better than most what you got in your rotation.
Yeah, so the thing with Walker Buehler, once again, starting pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers, he was away from the team. He kind of got away from the team. He was doing his own thing. He was working, on mechanics and stuff like that. So I think that's what Dave Roberts was basically trying to say is that I don't really know what's going on because I'm not there and, I don't have all the major details. So I think when Walker Buehler gets back with the Dodgers and they can really look at him, maybe if there was a sim game or something like that, they could see where his stuff is at. And as Matt mentioned, this is a guy who has the pedigree, who's been one of the best pitchers in baseball before, has thrown 200 innings, once and 180 innings before, has shown good ERAs. He has a career 3.17 ERA. That's through 114 starts. Once again, Walker Buehler, who we're talking about here, 675 innings, 721 strikeouts, and a career 106 whip. Those numbers speak for themselves. I know he's been through a lot, surgery, with, this, that, and the next thing. He's still only 29 years old, 6'2", 185 pounds. Really love what Walker Buehler could bring to the table. And coming up next, we're going to be talking about Heston Kjerstad, one of Walker Buehler's teammates, and a couple of other young, interesting players. And once again, those names are coming up next.
Passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning a championship. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Motors, guaranteed fit your part, guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at a price you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions may apply. eBay's guaranteed fit is only available for U.S. customers. Game Time is the authorized ticket marketplace of the MLB, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on Game Time app is actually going down as it gets closer to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals and all-in-one prices, views from your seats, and the lowest price guaranteed, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Save up to 60% on your last-minute sports events, concerts, comedy, and theater, and so much more. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of your game and events. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose a seat for you. And toggling through pricing and things like that. Game Time gives you all-in-one pricing, so there's no surprises upon checkout. Views from your seat, so you get a panoramic view right from where you're sitting, so that you make sure that you're not sitting behind a pole. And Game Time has the lowest price guaranteed, and if they don't, they will credit you up to 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage covers your purchase. Is covered more than the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets this season with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time app today. Last minute tickets and lowest prices guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports and ESPN on your TV all day? Have you had to turn down the volume of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you canvas analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on Amazon Fire TV app, channel app, or on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Introducing the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast Diamond Club on Subtext, your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. As the season unfolds, rely on our dynamic content. Get real-time alerts right to your phone, including waiver wire rankings, instant call-up notifications, injury actions, and a whole lot more. Stay ahead of your fantasy league by joining the Diamond Club on Subtext, where your path to victory begins. And by joining now, you get a free 2 weeks. Check us out. The link is in the description below. Oh, I need a drink and a half. Go ahead.
Of course, brother. And I think it's a super easy transition. Let's move to Walker Buehler's teammate, Bobby Miller. So he's an interesting case. It's been a real down year for Bobby Miller. Once again, Los Angeles Dodgers starting pitcher, 7 starts, an 8.07 ERA, 29 innings, 18 walks, 27 strikeouts, and a 1.82 whip. Now, those are worst pitcher in baseball type numbers. You remember Lucas Giolito had a year, I don't know, maybe it was like 6-7 years ago at this point, where he had an 80 ERA and was just like really bad. And even Corbin Burns, similar type of thing, where just a year had like such a bad ERA, just nothing was working for them. And then they came back and they wound up figuring it out. So I hope Bobby Miller can do it this year. I have some faith he can do it this year. He needs to get down in the minors, which they are working on with him. Get it right. Figure out, he has 5+ pitches. Even if he can get 3 of them, working, I really think there is a path to success for Bobby Miller here. He gets to learn from some of the best pitchers in baseball with Tyler Glasnow, Kershaw, Yamamoto, and all of those. James Paxton's even been a great pitcher in his career. A lot of great mentors there for the young Bobby Miller. And there really is a path for him to get right when you have so much talent there. it's just been a really down year. And if you go to his Baseball Savant and you look at last year, everything's red pretty much for the most part. There's one or two, underlying stats that didn't look good last year, but pretty much everything did. So, for a starting pitcher with the prospect pedigree of Bobby Miller, him being only 25 years old, I love the frame at 6'5", 220, the pedigree, the pitches. He leaves, you drooling from a fantasy baseball perspective, but, just the results haven't been there so far. So there's every reason to still believe in the young Bobby Miller. I think we just need to hold the faith. And, I'm not dropping yet. If you do have him, I just don't think he's a drop. And that's why, I want to talk about players being slept on and have seen him being dropped in a few leagues. Kind of want to at least wait a month after the All-Star break to see where it goes with him.
Yeah, I mean, there is some underlying stats that are even more concerning about this year. His fastball is down about 2 miles an hour. His sinker is down about 3. His curveball is even down about 1 mile per hour. Even his slider's down about 1 mile per hour. Things are just a little weird out there. But one thing I will say, when the Dodgers decide to take out their top pitching prospect of last year, who was incredibly successful, say, hey, we're going to go work on you, and they want to bring him back up, which will be soon. I have a feeling he's going to come back great. The league has adapted to AI, and AI has made wonders for players when it comes to making changes to their mechanics. You look at Nola at the end of last year and Wheeler, especially Nola, the changes that were made from, pretty much the middle of September all throughout the playoffs. He was a much better pitcher than he was throughout the season. AI being incorporated and helping with the mechanics can seriously make a difference. And that's exactly what they're doing with Miller. So I have a feeling he's going to be back up and right in no time. So I would be trying to acquire him now, and it'll probably cost you nothing. But anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about Heston Kjerstad. One of the top prospects of the Baltimore Orioles, got the call earlier in the season and couldn't make do with it and got sent down, obviously. Got the recall, though, and he's been great since he's gotten the call. Since getting the call, he's had 5 runs, 3 bombs, 12 ribs, a stolen base bat, and 378 on the month. Unfortunately, that streak would have kept going if he didn't get hit in the head with a pitch. It all just, he's dealing with a concussion. He woke up. He said, I'm Batman. And you're like, no, you're not Batman. You're Heston Kjerstad. Who's Heston Kjerstad? I'm going to save Gotham. So, Heston Kjerstad is just, trying to figure out his identity. I think he'll be back probably by the end of this weekend and be just fine. The dude is about 32% owned, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. 35%, 35. So, I feel he should be added everywhere if he's, owned in leagues that isn't dynasty. I'm going to try and go and acquire him, try and get, be like, I'll hold on to him. I have faith in him, you know what I'm saying? So, like, see if you can kind of get him on the cheap. But, I mean, he's out there in most leagues where you probably can add him and stash him for the next week. He's going to be great.
Yeah, outfield has been tough, and I think Kjerstad is definitely the way you can look, has the prospect pedigree, and, Baltimore pretty much, just grows these guys on trees at this point, and they all look the same too, which is the funniest thing. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the memes out there with all of the Baltimore, young guys, and they literally, the guy they drafted, looks the same as the rest of them, so it's hilarious, to be honest. So I'm there with you, Matt. I don't really have too much to add besides I'm just a fan of Kjerstad myself. But let's keep pushing. Let's move on to this next guy. Let's talk some Tobias Myers. A really interesting name for me. I had seen he was, picking it up, and I was just like, is this another, guy that Milwaukee kind of just has, worked their magic with? Because you know what, he came over, he's played for a plethora of teams in his career and had some success, down in the minors this year. They called him up. He's been really good. Through 13 starts, once again, Tobias Myers, we're talking about a 3.13 ERA, 72 innings, 62 strikeouts, only 20 walks, a 112 whip. A guy that has, somewhat of success down in the minor leagues through his career, but doesn't have the greatest track record. I just like what he brings to the table, and I always trust Milwaukee. We just talking about Baltimore. I still got Baltimore in my head for some reason. So I really trust Milwaukee with the Burns and the Woodruffs and the Freddie Peraltas over the years. They kind of just proved that they can, take some starting pitchers and make them really good. The run on his fastball looks, the only thing that's really holding him back. I like the run on his breaking stuff. and the off-speed stuff looks pretty good as well. Some of the underlying stuff isn't fantastic, but I think, like I said, I think Milwaukee's figured something out with this guy. He's 25 years old, 6'1", 217. He's got a good frame on him. Throws, 4 pitches at least 12% of the time. So, keeping hitters on their toes when it comes to that. And has had success with most of them. The cutter is something that doesn't really work well for him, but everything else has been really good. The slider, batters only hitting 180 against Tobias Myers slider. His changeup, they're hitting 091. His fastball, they're hitting 207. So I think there's really a path to success for the young pitcher for the Milwaukee Brewers. Once again, Tobias Myers.
Yeah, and I mean Tobias Myers is an interesting one. He's somebody I've considered adding throughout the weeks, and I feel like we might be seeing something that could be great. So, Dom, you had a great take, and honestly, before I even give my take, which I think I don't need to because you did such a fantastic job, but coming up next, we have guys like Lars Nootbaar, Andrew Vaughn, and Jarred Kelenic, and like, how should we approaching them going into the second half? Are they going to be duds or are they going to be second half studs? You'll find out right after this.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities. With hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation, rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball's rival city. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. And whenever I talk about Booking.com, I always mention Camden Yards. As a Yankee fan, I've been to Camden Yards, and just a beautiful stadium out there in Baltimore. So Booking.com can definitely make you enjoy even your rival city. So book today on Booking.com, on their site, or even on the Booking.com app. And PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. You can pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Exploring my skills on PrizePicks this season adds an extra layer of excitement to daily fantasy sports. With just a few taps, you can transform $10 into $1,000 easily. PrizePicks is an incredibly user-friendly platform. You can make selections and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. And as the host of Locked On Fantasy Baseball, here's some rock-solid picks. For Paul Skeens to have higher than 8 strikeouts in his next start, and that young gun has been on fire, so I think that's an easy one. You can opt for Jose Ramirez to have higher than 1.5 total bases in his next outing, and then you can opt for Bobby Witt to have higher than 0.5 home runs in his next game. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And Matt, that is always a lot, my brother, as you know. So I think I'm just going to pass it on to you here, if that's all right.
Yeah, no problem. So this guy we talked about early in the week on the Must Add show on Monday, but he needs to be highlighted again because now it's a different standpoint. It's Lars Nootbaar. Lars Nootbaar is, on the St. Louis Cardinals, and we all know who he was in the past. If you're new to fantasy baseball, let me clue you in. Lars Nootbaar has had an interesting past. I'm just pulling it up now. So, a couple of years ago in 2022, when he first was like a nobody really knew who he was. He came up, he was a waiver wire darling. He had 290 at-bats through that half the season, 53 runs, 16 doubles, 3 triples, 14 bombs, 40 ribs, 4 stolen bases. The batting average wasn't impressive, but he was still getting used to really just the role. And, still had a nice slug of 448, a decent OPS of 788. So, he had some bright spots outside of the batting average, and he was doing all the right things. He comes up the next year in 2023, obviously couldn't stay on the field that long, but didn't have a terrible season. 426 at-bats, 74 runs, 23 doubles, a triple, 14 bombs, 46 ribs, 11 stolen bases. Batted .261 that year. It was pretty nice. and also the walk to strikeout, 72 walks to 99 strikeouts, with again similar OPS of 784. This year, he's just been hurt. He only managed to put together about 170 at bats. Not an atrocious season, but not something that I'm really excited about either. But I think there's better days to come. The dude does hit the ball pretty hard. So, like right now, with this short sample size of the season itself, he has an average exit velocity of about 91.7 miles per hour. He's getting a good amount of hard hit percentage, about 51% of the time. So when he hits the ball, more than half the time he's hitting that ball hard, and that can create some home run opportunities. He's not chasing. He's not whiffing. These are goods. He's not really striking out all that much. He's walking. These are all great signs of a guy that's going to turn around. Even his ex-Wilbur in the short sample size at 352. I like the upside of Lars Nootbaar. It's really just a matter of, are we going to be breaking out this, the stretcher for him, or is he going to decide to play baseball and man up? We'll see. Him and the St. Louis Cardinals need each other, so let's hope that they could do that, and let's hope that Lars Nootbaar can, stay on the field and get us to the glory land.
Yeah, Matt, great take there on Nootbaar. I don't really have too much to add besides he's 28% owned on Yahoo, so widely available. And Matt mentioned all the underlying stuff looks great for Nootbaar. So he's literally, I think, a prime candidate for what we're talking about. A guy who hasn't really been talked about that much in the first half. I truly think is being slept on going into the second half. Lars Nootbaar is one of my favorite names on today's episode. Literally add him everywhere that you can until he gets hurt. Let's move on to this next name. Another name that I kind of think, goes along with the theme of today's episode very well. It's Andrew Vaughn of the Chicago White Sox. Former high-end prospect, 26 years old right now, 6 foot 215. I think the White Sox are, fire sailing, and this could be a guy that's on the move. Hits the ball really hard. Exit velocity is good. Barrels it up well. Just pretty much at this point in Vaughn's career, I think he's got that pop in the bat, but I think he needs to move on. I think he needs a new home. We talked about his teammate Eloy Jimenez and said the same thing for him. I think the same applies to Vaughn. And if he gets a fresh start somewhere else, a guy that could hit 250, 260 with some pop in the bat. Depends on where he falls in the lineup, where RBIs and runs are going to be. But I really do like Vaughn, and I think it's a guy, just once again, I hate to keep repeating myself, but just needs a new home. And that 41% owned, you can still go out there and add Vaughn in a lot of leagues. He's first base eligible. And like I said, if you need some pop, you need a guy to, you can somewhat believe it. I think we can go out there and snag Andrew Vaughn.
Yeah, I mean, Vaughn's been a great starter, streamer. So, like, when he is, rocking and rolling, he's somebody I'm streaming in my lineup over guys that I would normally start every day. Because when Vaughn's hot, he just produces. He wins you weeks. There was a week we told him to stream, and he put up like 3 home runs in that week. Vaughn is just very, very streaky. Maybe if he gets on another team, 1, he's probably inspired, but 2, maybe the hitting coach can kind of harness what he's got going on and make it a little bit more consistent. So we may see some serious improvements after the deadline. Sorry, it's about to rain here on my end. So if you hear some thunder, my bad. But anyway, where I'm going with this is there's a lot of upside with Vaughn, and I just hope that it all pays off. I'm adding him now, especially when he's on a heater. Let's move on to Jarred Kelenic of the Atlanta Braves. He has been somebody that we've talked about. He's been hot at times. He's still 53% owned. So he is out there in about 67% of leagues. And, this last month isn't atrocious, isn't the best either, but 11 runs, 4 bombs, 11 ribs, 4 stolen bases, batting 233. On the season, he's batting about 255. I like the upside. Obviously, he's on one of the best teams in baseball. So there's that upside right there where the runs and ribbies can seriously, be there just because of the opportunity. He does lead off at times, which is another beautiful thing. So he can be driven home, be a runs cheat code. And if he decides to really show out and, show what he did in the minors of, his batting average and such, he can seriously be valuable all around. He does have some good underlying stats. The average exit velocity is at 89.7. He's battling up quite a bit. Hard hit percentage about 45.5% of the time. His launch angle sweet spot is really nice at 38.2%. And the only thing I feel he needs to just work on is not chasing and not whiffing and not striking out and just kind of drawing more walks. That's the only thing that like I feel would kind of benefit him, obviously for fantasy, but also too probably kind of give him a little bit better of an opportunity because he is not a Kyle Schwarber guy where he's, hitting the ball at 93 miles per hour on an average and with a max EV of like 118. He needs to find the right pitch and then drive it over the fence. So Jarred Kelenic, there could be some improvements coming with more playing time, which is the most he's ever had. And on top of that, just the opportunity.
Yeah, and he's like you said, that Braves team has so many good players to learn from. You got the Matt Olsons, the Michael Harrises, just a bunch of just great all-star caliber players in the team for him to learn from. And I said this when Acuna went down, and this is when I really told you guys to add, Kelenic, and he's been pretty good since then. I was like, he's the kind of guy that this might be what he needed to get it going. He might have needed to see, the Acuna go down and say, hey, my team needs me now. And that it's not the kind of pressure on, hey, I'm a major big time prospect and I have to perform. No, it's like, hey, this is a baseball thing. This is a team thing now. And he's really performed well since then. Matt Reguloff, a lot of the underlying stats look good for Kelenic. And he's just somebody I've always been really excited about. He just turned 25 like 2 days ago. So happy belated to Kelenic as well there. So there's still a lot of room left for him to grow. Guys, but that being said, that's all for today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. And shout out to our everydayers and new listeners for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. But guys, until next time, see ya.